If you and your community want to reduce crime, then maybe think about some of the tips in this video. However, if you and your community just want to listen to horrific stories of crime, like a bunch of voyeuristic psychos with nothing better to do, then boy, do I have good news for you. Because my true crime podcast, The Casual Criminalist, publishes 2 new episodes every week. Elementary school serial killers? Oh yes. Weird letter-writing stalkers that ruin a family's beautiful new home that they just moved to? Yes. Doctors who abuse their authority to murder people? Yeah. You bet. So, if any of that sounds interesting to you, well, maybe talk to a therapist or something, but also check out The Casual Criminalist via the links in the description below. Thank you, let's get into it. Americans will never stop fearing crime on a profound, primal level. News media will make sure of that. A 2019 Gallup poll showed that while 38% of people believed that crime was on the rise in their local area, 78% believed it was on the rise nationwide, even though it's been trending downward since the 1990s. Yep. Even during the pandemic. So, with so many people living in fear of being victimized by crime, you'd think there would be plenty of open-mindedness regarding potential solutions. So please approach these potential solutions with an open mind. They've been subjected to considerable testing and study. So even if they seem fanciful, too good to be true, or agenda-driven, they have got the backing of cold, hard analysis. Number 10. Nutritional Programs. Whether school lunches should be free or not is a surprisingly partisan topic in political terms. What's much clearer is that providing free food to the impoverished children has been an effective crime deterrent with quantifiable results. A study published in 2016 of 35,000 people found that white and Hispanic males who self-identified as having often experienced hunger growing up were around 3 times more likely to be prone to violence than those who had not, while among black respondents it was about 50% more. That's not to say that giving more food to poor people is any kind of surefire solution, and in fact, without some balancing efforts, it could backfire. A 5-year study conducted by Chelsea Singleton of the University of Illinois found that when there were high levels of obesity and physical inactivity, communities of all races experienced increases in violent crime. It seems like any nutritional program will need a companion program to burn many of those calories off. Number 9. More Nightlight. In 2018, the New York City Police Department, New York City Housing Authority, and the research group Crime Lab published their findings on a 6-month study of 80 neighborhoods which contained more than 80,000 people. They found a 39% reduction in violent crime in those neighborhoods when the amount of lighting was significantly increased. These included high-priority neighborhoods where as few as 21% of the residents reported that they felt safe walking around at night. Notably, the study was supported by 13 others conducted in the US and the UK, but both the scale of those other studies and the degree of crime decrease they found was much smaller, averaging only 27%. Although it does feel odd to use the word only when describing a 27% crime decrease in any context. Number 8. Robust non-profits. This might feel like too broad of a statement, so much so that there would be risk of overlap with entry number 10, but the data that endorsed a policy of strong support for nonprofit organizations is completely separate and quite precise. It comes from a 2017 New York University report called Community and the Crime Decline, which included data collected from 1990 through 2013. It found that for cities of roughly 100,000 people, for every large nonprofit group related to crime and community life, murder dropped roughly 0.9%, violent crime in general dropped 0.6%, and property crime dropped 0.4%. Effectiveness of nonprofits in helping crime areas is supported around the world, including in the most harrowing locations. Take Medellin, Colombia, hometown of Pablo Escobar, and such a notoriously violent place that it was nicknamed Machine Gun City. In 2017, CNN reported that a vigorous library expansion and all the accompanying community programs were changing the very nature of the seemingly hopeless place. Number 7. Green spaces. Now, this may be the first one that a lot of people will be skeptical of, since parks in urban areas are commonly considered hotbeds for criminal activity. That's to no small extent because it's actually true. A 2015 study found that crime in parks and surrounding neighborhoods was up to 4 times higher than those without parks, and that violent crime was up to 11 times higher. That's why the distinction between parks and green spaces needs to be understood. Green spaces are essentially accenting buildings, plazas, and other urban sectors with small areas of plant life rather than areas of relative forestry, like a row of trees versus a naturalistic grove of them. Studies have found that compact green spaces can lower crime in nearby buildings by as much as 52%. Even parks can be converted from crime hotspots to crime deterrents if there is regular maintenance and organized community activities. So it's not the most encouraging news for park fans, but fans of greenery can still take heart that their passion can help a city if used in moderation. Number 6. Violence in video games. Now, we've all heard violent video games being used as a scapegoat anytime there's a young mass shooter in America, and yet there's significant evidence that popular violent video games have short-term yet positive effects. Censorship of game content has been proposed to have seemingly been counterproductive. In 2014, the American Psychological Association published a study that found that during the times around the release of major violent games, such as those in the Grand Theft Auto series, crime rates consistently dipped. In 2011, a study conducted by University of Baylor and the Center for European Economic Research found a 1% decrease in crime for every 10% increase in sales of violent video games. The unflattering conclusion was that society benefited from how the games kept people whose brains hadn't fully finished developing too busy with a harmless activity to go out and commit crimes, which still sounds better than the alternative. Number 5. Classical music. It turns out the claim we heard for years that classical music raises the intelligence of children is not true. There's a very valid reason for businesses and other establishments to play classical music to young people. It's admittedly a pretty cynical one. In 2003, a station with Transport for London with a high crime rate began an experiment of playing classical music. A 33% drop in robberies and 37% drop in vandalism followed. It was replicated in all businesses across the UK and America, such as a McDonald's on the Isle of Wight in 2019. The reason given for its success was that playing Bach and Vivaldi through the loudspeakers made the location seem stodgy and uncool. This compels the youth to leave the general area, as it tends to give off the vibe of being uncool. Obviously, this is proposed more as a business than a governmental policy, as it tends to be pretty bad for cities and towns to drive all the youth away, as much as the senior citizens might want that. Number 4. Organized religion. Now, here's one that should appeal to those who judged the earlier entries a bit too hippy-dippy. Yet, it's supported by a study published in 2013 of 182 counties in New York, California, and Texas, conducted by Pennsylvania State University. The study found that among impoverished white, black, and Latino populations, a larger percentage of the population that identified with organized religion meant a lower crime rate. This has been demonstrated time and time again over the years. In 2011, the Houston Chronicle reported that 247 studies conducted between 1944 and 2010 found a similar result. Only 2 from the same sample found that more organized religiosity meant more crime. Now, it must be noted that research has only indicated a benefit for communities with organized religion that reinforces a sense of community. The PSU study found that among people that identified as spiritual but not religious, the crime rate was actually significantly higher than among non-religious. Number 3. Prison education. For many people, prison is at least as much about the satisfaction of punishing people as it is about preventing crime. But for those more interested in preventing crimes and recidivism, it's no contest from a logistical perspective. The 2004 UCLA School of Public Policy and Social Research report, Correctional Education as a Crime Control Program, by Audrey Bazos and Jessica Hausman, found that while $1 million spent expanding the prison system prevented an average of 350 crimes, spending the same money on correctional education prevented 600 crimes of comparable severity. As it is, there are concerns about how prisons control the education that convicts receive. For example, Mother Jones reported that in 2017, the book Freakonomics was banned from Texas prison libraries because it quoted a slur from a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and yet 2 books from David Duke, the former leader of the Klan, were allowed into the same system. There have also been massive cuts to prison library funding nationwide since the 2008 recession, such as the state of Illinois cutting the annual prison budget from $750,000 in the 2000s to $276 for 28 facilities by 2017. Unfortunately, it would seem that the US prison system is letting this opportunity slip through its fingers, or at least it's being extremely clumsy with it. Number 2. Diversity. There are a number of people that will suggest that ethnic diversity leads to tensions that increase crime rates, such as Charlton Heston in the 2002 documentary Bowling for Columbine. As with violent video games, the evidence indicates that the truth is a bit closer to the opposite. That's according to Sefer Churchill and Manuel Larrea, authors of the 2019 study Crime and Ethnic Diversity, Cross-Country Evidence, which analyzed data patterns from 78 countries. They found that whether it was a matter of ethnic or linguistic diversity, crime rates were lower across the board among more diverse communities to a degree outside the margin for error. This, by the way, went against the results that Churchill and Larrea expected, with they themselves saying in the abstract that they arrived at the results counterintuitively. Linguistic diversity was actually more beneficial in a number of areas, as for example regarding crimes of theft. The ethnically diverse communities had 8.4% lower crime, while linguistically diverse communities saw a 9.8% lower rate. On balance, ethnic diversity was more beneficial, considering such matters as a homicide rate that was 1.62% 3% lower in linguistically diverse communities, while a much more robust 6.38% lower in ethnically diverse communities. But surely, when it comes to homicide, any policy that lowers a rate by even one victim is worth considering. Number 1. Guaranteed income. Many people first heard the idea of universal basic income from Andrew Yang's 2020 campaign for the Democratic Party presidential nomination in 2020, but it actually has been floated around since studies were performed for it in Denver and Seattle under President Nixon. It's also been a reality for Americans living in Alaska since 1982, not to mention the Eastern Band of Cherokee in North Carolina. Everywhere guaranteed income has been attempted, the results have been a significant lowering in the crime rate, particularly for property crime. Encouragingly, it's also been found to increase social cohesion, lower stress, and improve public health by making visits to the doctor more affordable. All of this has happened without any of these experiments causing a decrease in workforce participation. There are still rational concerns such as inflation, though there has been data from a 2003 Mexican poverty program that strongly indicates that inflation fears are exaggerated, but the possibilities as a crime deterrent justify further tests at the very least. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.